And we're live. Welcome everybody. Welcome to this live talk on healing and spiritual connection, part 2. For those who were here last week, myself, Pierre-Etienne, with my colleague Amari, who is a pain management coach. We've been talking about spiritual connection and healing. And today, as mentioned in the chat, we're gonna do part 2 because that was a rich conversation, and we thought it would be good for it in about a minute. I'd like to invite you maybe to just start with a nice slow deep breath in. And here's Amari. Hello,
Good afternoon over there.
Good morning to you. Good morning to you. How are you, Amari?
I'm great. Today is my first full day being in Mexico. And we're having a great time. It's awesome. How about you?
Yeah, doing well. Excited about today's conversation. Because I was mentioning here that last week we took some time to already start this conversation around spiritual connection and healing, and it did feel a little, it did feel a little short, right? There was more to say, more to explore. So let's do part 2, shall we?
Let's do part 2.
So let's start as always with just a couple of nice slow deep breaths. Whether you're joining us live or you're watching that replay, just take a couple of breaths here with us. Regardless of what's going on, what you're bringing here, welcome to you. As a reminder, today, let me pin that comment here. We will be, my colleague Amari and myself, Pierre-Etienne from the Healing Studio Online. We're going to continue to discuss spiritual connection and healing. Welcome, Benoit. Welcome, Energy of Life. Welcome, everybody.
Welcome.
So, today, we said let's get a little deeper into that conversation, right? Let's get a little deeper, and maybe let's get a little bit more personal, so we don't get lost into, general statements about the world and research and so on and so forth. And so maybe let's take a few moments here to reflect on last week. What stuck with you from last week? Anything from our conversation that, that stayed with you, Amari?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. There are so many things that stayed with us, and it was a great conversation. If anyone that's watching this hasn't seen it, please go back and watch it. It's already posted on Healing Studio Online. So one thing that really stuck out to me was a story that you shared, and what I learned from it is that healing is not just mind and body. And when there was a change in my life, I had to understand that it was body, mind, and spirit. And just because our bodies might be sick and every now and then, or our mind might not be that strong, there is some serenity that we can have, some peace that I can find when my spirituality is strong, when I act in faith versus fear, when I see that there is a bigger purpose than just me and the experience that I'm currently going through. And also understanding that if I don't see physical changes that signify healing, there can still be healing in the mind, there can still be healing in the spirit. So not to discount those parts of our healing journey.
Yeah. Right. So we're going back here to the concept of healing as a process of alignment and integration. I think for me, these are words that really resonate deeply, because obviously we're talking about many levels, many layers, But I do find it to a certain extent frustrating, and I guess I'm frustrated at my own, you know, my own limitations for so many years to look at people and to what's the word I'm looking for, and to lack faith in their ability to heal. Right. And I guess that was my own lack of faith, basically, that was projecting on others. And so here for me, the takeaway from last week was indeed, like you said, that sense of moving towards alignment and integration, that ability to surrender, which in terms of my nervous system will translate as, well, there's less activation, there's less intensity, there's I'm surrendering, right? Which is very different from giving up. I'm surrendering into that higher power. I'm reminding myself of my own innate ability to heal.
Yes.
And what can be, I think, particularly challenging for many people, and particularly for me, and for some reason since since last week, and I mean, quite a lot these past few weeks, but particularly since last week, I've had a lot of conversation around grief and death, and being sick, and remembering that also there is a gift there. There is a gift there, and there's also, and I'll quote my wife here, who's saying how, sometimes we're so entitled, we think we're never gonna get sick, or we're never gonna, who are we to think that, we're never gonna catch any disease, any virus, and we're gonna live forever? Like who are we to think that we know what's best for us, right? And so remembering that in the pain, in the disease, as challenging as it may be, there is oftentimes a gift that needs to be dug out, right?
Right.
That's when we look to concepts of post-traumatic growth and the transformation of, that happens with suffering, and maybe that can be a conversation for another time. But that's what I stayed with from last week. That us as a society, that it's important for us to remember that we're divine, right?
Exactly.
That we have gifts beyond our mere conscious, intellectual, rational understanding. And the moment that we get that attempt to rationalize and to analyze, and to outsmart everything, that's when we're actually able to move forward. And I'll speak for myself and for most of what I've witnessed in my private practice in the past 10 years, right? So for us, my hope and my prayer, since we're going to go into, our own personal spiritual practices, is that we remember to come back to that. We remember to come back to the fact that it's not just, it's not just the body, it's not just the emotions, it's not just this, not just that. Let's look at things holistically, right? So we allow for that alignment.
Absolutely.
Makes sense?
Yeah, it makes total sense. I am on the same page.
So let's, since we're on healing and spiritual connection, let's take a little bit of a deeper dive here. Again, trying as always to keep it relatively short and sweet for our viewers. I wanted to invite you and to invite myself to go a little deeper and to have a look at our own practices, our own spiritual practices, and to what extent do they promote healing? Because for me, interestingly, my spiritual practices came after my studies, or like I mentioned last week, they kind of came they came together, right? As
Okay.
eventually, not a surprise, not a
Yeah.
coincidence, but I started
No.
to realize that as I'm engaging in these practices, I would be like, oh, wow. From the
Yeah.
standpoint of a nervous system, these are amazing practices, right? And
Yeah.
even if I wasn't doing it as a spiritual practice, I still believe that people should be doing something like this because, right, there were so many benefits.
Right.
So would you care to share maybe, one or two or whatever you wish to share around your own spiritual practices, and to what extent do you believe that
Yeah.
they promote your healing?
Yeah. So my spiritual practices have before, during my chronic pain journey, they would kind of just be whenever I thought I needed extreme help, I would practice spirituality and prayer. And I recognized, and when there was a shift in my health journey and my healing journey, my chronic pain journey, was when I became more consistent and believing that what I'm doing is really healthy for me, and my alignment, mind, body, and spirit. So there's this book that I read, and it's called Miracle Morning, and it has acronyms called savers, and these are things that I do every single morning. Wake up at 5 a.m. and my husband and I commit to this every single day, which is the savers means silence, affirmations, visualization. um, the the exercise is really, for me, is understanding my body. So it's more of mindful movement, stretching, seeing how my body feels, reflecting, and then reading and scripture. So, and scribing. So that reading for me is reading the Bible every morning, and then rewriting my understanding, applying it to my life in different ways. Okay, where could this lesson could help me in the future, and where could it have helped me in the past, and how can I heal from it? And then praying over that, and asking for a better understanding, for strength to use this knowledge in the future, and strength to use this knowledge as faith over fear. And the reason why we do this, the reason why my husband and I do this, is because it has made a tremendous change in the way that I show up in the world. It prepares me by doing this in the morning, no phone down, not trying to play catch up with the world, but just knowing that I have my faith. Um, I have visualization for a healthy future, and that doesn't just mean eating good food. It doesn't just
Right.
mean just exercising, but complete alignment, and what that looks like for ourselves, me and my husband. And the affirmations is a really big thing for me, because 91% of women don't look in the mirror, don't truly just look in the mirror and see themselves. And sometimes, sometimes when I would have a lot of pain and when I would be in a flare up, I didn't look at myself in the mirror. And what I'm noticing in my practice while I do these visualizations and affirmations, and after I read the Bible, is I'm able to look in the mirror and ask and really appreciate the person that is looking at me in the mirror, and ask myself, my reflection, what does she need from me today in my actions? I'm not going to nitpick myself. I'm not going to ignore myself today. I'm going to practice change talk. I'm going to show up as my authentic self, and to show up understanding that people are people. And if I want room to grow and to hold space for healing, I have to give that to other people, but I have to give it to myself. So this acronym that we do for 2 hours every morning is amazing, because it allows me to align myself, and it gives me this type of spiritual shield, but also gives me a bowl to hold space for others when they're also in a space where they are healing, whether it's mind, body, or spirit. It just it gives me the patience to have that understanding. And I love the practice that we have in the morning, and I do believe that being able to have that space, have patience to understand myself, and also to give to myself first, allows me to give love, allows me to release any built up anger, because when I had built up anger and built up frustration and lack of communication on where I needed help when I was in true excruciating pain, it only racked up my nervous system and kept me away from healing. So being able to, that's the essential part, is being able to have the patience has allowed me, and being able to have patience with myself and for others has allowed me to express my emotions and express my thoughts in a way that I'm empathetic, and in a way where my nervous system and my body and my mind doesn't feel entrapped in pain. But there is a better understanding of myself and others where I can move forward, and be a healthy person to myself and others. Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, there's just so much that you shared here, and I'm grateful for it. And if I may comment on a couple of things here
Absolutely.
that spoke to me. Number one, let's remember that you're doing this first thing in the morning, and it's no surprise if so many spiritual traditions are saying just get up. This is a special time. Some in my book, this is that's where sunrise is, and before sunrise, that's when there's most angelic presence down here, according to certain traditions. And so and it is a special time of that's a little quieter, I think, inside and outside. And so when I first of all, there's this part, right? What do I start my day with? And number two, when you speak of silence, affirmations, visualizations, body movement, and reading of scriptures, as a practitioner, I also am reflecting on that, right? How that silence is so restorative, right? This is in itself, silence is restorative, and not that I don't think we need research to show it, but we actually do have research showing it, right? Like that silence in itself gives us that sense of peace for us to promote healing. When you talk about affirmations and visualizations, I've been studying and practicing clinical hypnotherapy for the past 12 years, and so there's so much going on here when we're able to have that rehearsal of what is it that I want to attract in my life. And everything is vibration, right? Yeah. And so whether you're an energy practitioner or an astrophysician, I think there's an agreement increasingly, or hopefully, that everything is vibration, right? And so here the question is really what is my vibrations? What am I attracting? And you talk about that shield as well. What am I protecting from? Which I think is is also pretty important. You talk about body movements, right? In terms of alignment, movements. Not to say that stillness, stillness has its place, but again, in my book, movements is a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful gift. And the reading of scriptures, or the recitation, also in itself, I think can have so many benefits. And sometimes I'm beyond, in addition to the gift that I know at least I don't understand consciously, right? Like all the benefits from it, but the mere benefits when I think of my own reading or recitations, just the mere fact of me trying to remember things, right? Like, and I'm thinking about how today we live in a society where, you know, there was this guy who said at some point, you know, because of technology and this, and our memory and our attention span is just, you know, it's a catastrophe. It's going down the drain. And he's like, it's not a question of like wanting to remember, you know, all the phone numbers of everybody, but at least remembering one or two or three, right? How many of us now are able to remember these phone numbers? And so for me, that's interesting because in addition to the benefits that I believe we receive spiritually, I think there's also a gift physically and mentally in terms of concentration, in terms of flexibility, in terms of being able to focus and to practice presence. I know for me personally, you know, the three pillars, and there's quite a few for me. You know, I'm a student of Sufi Islam for many years, and so there are several pillars, and some of these pillars, in addition to some specific traditions like fasting, Ramadan, and some of these physical practices, which for me actually, I practiced that before actually becoming Muslim, because I was like, oh, this is fascinating. As a practice for me for a whole month to just fast from sunset to sundown, like what a beautiful thing. What an interesting thing. And so in addition to that, the rest of the year for me, the main practices would be meditation, recitation, just like, you know, prayer beads, would be prayers several times a day, and then chanting. And when I look at these practices, and first I need to say that, you know, these practices fluctuate, right? They're like sometimes I resonate with you mentioning, like, you know, waking up every day 5 a.m. and for quite a while, I must say, I was doing this, and then I realized that my ego was actually getting in the way. That I was doing this to show to myself, right, how whatever that was, but basically I was, you know, that was my ego getting me up, not my sense of spirituality. So I had to check myself and to re-engage in a way that's more gentle and more compassionate. So it's a reminder to myself, to anybody who's like, okay, so I need to wake up at 4 a.m. and I think it's better to at least, I'll just speak for myself, it's better for me to pray out of love later than to pray with resentment at the time, you know, at 4 a.m. in the morning, because that's how I see it. The intention of my prayers, I think, is crucial, just like the intention in anything, right? Intention is key here. But going back to meditation, to daily prayers, which again for me includes, right, movements like bending over, putting my forehead on the floor, right? There's like particular prayers that are prayers of gratitude, right? That are prayers of different types of prayers that turned out for me to be an amazing outlet. An amazing outlet because I didn't know how to express at some point, you know, my gratitude for just the fact, for example, that my kids are healthy.
Yeah.
Right. And so I felt like I needed an outlet. And in that moment, the prayers were an amazing way for me to say, you know, I'm so happy. For me, my life changed when in my life came a word from the Arabic language, which is Alhamdulillah. And Alhamdulillah means praise to God.
Yeah.
Right. Which can be put, you know, anytime, anywhere. Right. If you get a good meal, Alhamdulillah. If you're right on time, alhamdulillah. If maybe you're in pain, it could also be alhamdulillah, it could be worse. Or alhamdulillah, there's a gift in it, right? And so that practice for me was very interesting because the meditation, the recitations were an opportunity for me, again, beyond the spiritual gifts, to just be able to practice memorizing, right? To practice, to keep my brain flexible, engaged, sharp, right? The prayers are an opportunity for me in the words of one of my colleagues from an organization that's called Lumos Transforms, which I worked with for many years, they're based in LA, and she described the daily prayers as a resiliency pause. And I found it so amazing, like that several times a day, I'm invited to stop everything I do and to say, I'm just going to recenter, right?
Yeah.
And I feel like if people were to do that, and I'm not talking about converting and doing, I'm saying if several times a day we were able to just stop everything we do and say, I'm going to take 2 minutes for myself to move, to focus, to breathe, to stretch, right? How beneficial, right, would that be?
Incredibly.
Right, incredibly beneficial. And the last one here for me is also around chanting.
Yes.
Such a beautiful, powerful practice, right? I think anybody who sang in a choir or at a concert or with I think everybody get a sense of what it's like. But then when you engage in these sacred traditional practices, and what I've personally experienced is really my body was buzzing. My body was buzzing. There's a sense, and again, as I was engaging in the practice, I was like, oh wow, as I'm chanting, there's actually a process of regulating my breath, of regulating my heartbeat. There's a resonance with everybody else who's singing, right? There's a rhythm. And so there's a sense in that rhythmicity, there's a sense of safety that's kicking in. And even when I had the privilege to guide some of these practices with men in men's circles, specifically with men who had never done that, it was fascinating to hear them say, wow, I've never felt connected like this.
Yeah.
I've never felt connected like this because because I think, sadly, a lot of people have forgotten how to pray.
Yeah.
I didn't know how to pray. I learned how to pray, right? And I'm still learning how to pray.
Yeah.
And behind that statement, I'm not saying, without again being proselytic, just saying, what is prayer?
Yeah.
Right? And there's many ways to pray, right? But here I guess for me in closing, I'd like to invite, just like I'm inviting myself to kind of explore, how do I pray? How do I contemplate? How do I connect to my body? How do I connect to my environment? How do I practice gratitude? How do I practice acceptance? Right? And so I'd like to invite people who are listening here, maybe take a moment to reflect on what are these resiliency pauses in your life? Where are these moments when you stop running around like a chicken without a head and you come back and you find a center and you ground yourself and you align yourself, and for a few moments it's you're breathing and whatever else resonates with you.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think it's really amazing for me to be able to come back to center, not just in the morning, but several times a day, because you know what, we deal with a lot of different people and a lot of different experiences and vibrations, like you mentioned earlier, and to be able to check back in with myself and reconnect to my values, my purpose, and the vision that I have for my life moving forward, and to just express gratitude for the breath that I'm taking. And the deeper I go into spirituality, I realize that as I read, no one on earth, like everyone on earth, will at one point in time experience suffering. And that suffering, what I've learned, especially from my pain, is that it doesn't have to be the worst thing that will ever happen to me, but there is beauty in understanding, being able to look at the pain that I feel, understand myself, understand where I need more alignment, and work on myself without ignoring the signals of my body. And it did take more than just the morning. Like the morning practice that we have, that's the longest practice. That's 2 hours, you know? But throughout the day, doing body scans and checking my thoughts, checking any twinges and how that connects to my thoughts, and how my emotions or any buildup that I experience is connected to any physical sensation that I have. Being able to do that constantly every day, check my thoughts. Was that true? What I just said, was that supportive to myself? Was that supportive to others? Was that through love? And just constantly trying to become a better person for myself and others, and for God. That check-in is so amazing, and it does help me physically, helps me mentally, and helps me spiritually. And like you said, it could just be a 2-minute pause in the day, and that's really beautiful. And for my clients, a lot of times I remind them, do a body scan, and ask yourself, when you feel when they feel overwhelming thoughts, because this is what I had to do, is when I would feel overwhelming thoughts or start to catastrophize, I would have to ask myself, is that true? And find strength through suffering, and find love and patience through suffering, and be able to really reconnect. And thank you for sharing that. I hope everyone watching this does take the time and try to start practicing those pauses throughout the day, because it will help you thoroughly, not just on the surface level.
Yeah. And maybe invitation, I mean, and I speak from personal experience, potentially exploring, right, different spiritual paths. And not to say that, you know, this is an easy path. I think conversation for another day, but you know, a lot of traditional practices have been co-opted and appropriated and stripped from their spiritual roots and applied as mere stress management tools, which I think can create some issues there at times. But my point is, as somebody who for me was completely disconnected from spirituality, that exploration of spirituality through practices, right, helped me heal. And so I'm really invited people to explore. I have some friends, you know, from, you know, Canadian friends who sometimes are asking me, you know, hey, can you remind me of that practice of recitation or chanting that we did? Because they're in the woods and it's an amazing day, and they're like, I want to give thanks, I want to do this, I want to do that, and I'm not sure how to do it. And I find that fascinating, for people to have the curiosity and the humility to say, hey, may I try this? I want to see how that feels. Because I know this is how I started. It led me through you know, down an amazing path of spiritual discoveries and healing. And I do believe that they're closely intertwined. So on that note, everybody, thank you very much for joining us. If you have any questions, comments, Amari and myself will be back every Tuesday. Yes, every Tuesday at 8 a.m. Pacific time. If you have any questions around healing, pain, and any other topic, we'd be more than happy to cover that. Anything else you'd like to mention, Amari?
Yes. So Pierre and I and 2 other practitioners, Julie is a physical therapist and Jen is a yoga therapist. We are doing an event on December 9th and it will be at 12 o'clock. We're going to start, we will definitely post it on Healing Studio Online and both of our platforms, Body and More Wellness and P. Vanier. And it's going to be really amazing. It's just a panel talk where we're discussing how one can boost their healing power through the holidays, because we understand that the holidays can be really stressful with societal expectations, familial expectations, and financial shifts. So if you tend to experience any type of stress during the holidays, we understand that stress can really affect the healing process. So please join us on December 9th. Tickets are just $15, and we will be sure to post all of these things in our platform so you can join us.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Amari. Enjoy Mexico. I'll see you next week.
See you next week. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everybody. Take care.
Thank you.